Hello, I'm Amy from moonmindology.com, and today I want to talk about that terrible event, the Donald Trump assassination attempt. I've looked at his chart before, and I've learnt a lot and changed some of my view on what's going to happen on the election and on his career. But I've also linked in the description the impressions that I had a year ago. So let's look at the update. So he's in the dasha of Jupiter and Ketu. Ketu lives in the second house, and this is a Marika planet, so this can inflict harm on him. Jupiter also rules the 8th, so there's risk there, but it also rules the 5th, which is lucky, and the duality of Jupiter can create the kind of situations that he found himself in on the 13th. Do remember that Donald Trump is a great believer that all publicity is good publicity, and I remember seeing once there was a rumour or something scandalous that came out, and there was a recording that he was said to have released himself, and you know, this is the kind of thing that I'm getting off this planet. A scandal that is good for his publicity, and he can use that. And it's especially extreme because Rahu is making an aspect to Jupiter as well. And then we also, of course, have Neptune right next to Jupiter, which gives illusion and confusion as well as glamour. This event has been highly glamorized for Trump, and also they still can't see a motive for the assassination attempt at the time of my recording. Transiting Ketu, that's just gone over his Neptune, and that's going to create even more confusing situations for Trump, but also a potential spiritual epiphany. And being almost assassinated, I think that would make anybody go, oh my gosh, you know, what is life? But yeah, I think you can see the spiritual epiphany, certainly by means of the transits, but also by means of his dashas as well, because Ketu is being highlighted. And you know, this is important for his transits. I haven't completely researched this properly, but I have noticed that when people are victims of heinous acts that make the news, very often the 10th house is involved. And if you think about it, it makes sense. This is the house of your name, status and reputation, and horrible though it is, when people are victims of things, that can be their famous 5 minutes, unfortunately. And so I can see logically how that makes sense. But Ketu is transiting his second house, and it's aspecting his 10th. Jupiter is transiting his 10th. So that's 2 dasha planets that are aspecting each other and pulling in the 2nd and the 10th house. And there's also Neptune involved as well. So he was going to be pulled into the limelight one way or another. And Neptune is really playing a major role here. And because of this, I doubt that they will ever really figure out what is going on or what the motives were. Ketu is also really powerful in his chart because it's exalted in Scorpio. The moon's debilitated next to an exalted planet whilst getting a full aspect from the sun, which makes it really, really powerful and full. There's turbulence in his life, and I'd say he's a workaholic that doesn't spend enough time with his family, but you know, it's not a completely destroyed moon, but there is something odd about it though. So what's happening next for Donald Trump? In September, he goes into the bhukti of Venus, and this is going to be really interesting because Venus rules his 10th house, but it's also the ruler of the D10 chart, so that's huge activation here. Jupiter remains in the 10th house of success, and Venus moves quite quickly, so there can be a lot of change, you know, for the most part of his second term. Venus lives in the 12th house with Saturn, so there can be links to government work or working in institutions as well, but there can be misfortunes, so it's not going to be an easy 4 years. Then in November, Venus is going to be in his 4th house on his moon, and I think this is going to bring him happiness. Then in January, Venus is going to be in his 7th house, so this is going to be new opponents, different from when he was a civilian. Venus is close to Saturn, so it's not going to be an easy ride. It's going to be a difficult 4 years. And you know, he may have problems in his relationships as well, but I would say this does point to a lot of extraction of materials from the earth. It could, you know, I think that his goal to revitalise the USA with oil exports, he's definitely going to do that. He's definitely going to get on with oil for sure. In August and November of this year, 2024, he's going to have Jupiter aspecting his own Jupiter exactly from the 10th house. So that's going to give him a lot of luck, opportunity. He's going to spend a lot of time in the public. But there can be some sadness in March as Saturn is aspecting his Ketu and his moon. And I think that there is a potential for, you know, again, his relationships and marriage to incur problems during this time. Then in April, he's going to have Jupiter aspecting itself again, and it's going to make him very visible again. That'll be April 2025. Then in May 2025, Jupiter's going to be transiting his natal eclipse. And when this last happened, Trump started making political headlines, and that was 2013. And I think he first made his appearance at CPAC at that time. And if you don't know what CPAC is, it's CPAC, Conservative Political Action Conference. And so one thing I will say about this whole disaster is that, you know, you've got people from both sides who are finally calling for the violence and anger to end and, you know, instead have unity in America. And, you know, the people have been poisoned against one another for years, and I think it's really hit well, it's been a long-term peak really, but I do hope that that unity does spring up. But looking at the election chart coming up, I don't see calm. I really don't. And despite the fact that Donald Trump is saying he's going to make America great again, and I really truly think that he believes that, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. You know, the USA is in the dasha of Rahu, and that sits in the 8th house of scandal and all things taboo. And, you know, you could say it's the house of transformation or birth or rebirth. But the last time that the USA was in this period was in the early 1900s, and there was so much turbulence and change. And, you know, there was urbanization. People were unhappy. They felt like they were losing their national identity. Their jobs were in trouble. There was unprecedented immigration, industrialization, land loss because they were building new cities. American farmers were feeling that they were going to lose everything to this new world. And it was a time where the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. Rahu also brought a lot of natural disaster for the USA. There was the Galveston hurricane of 1900, the California disaster in 1906, and in 1907 there was a financial crisis. So what I'm trying to say is that Rahu's going to bring change, disruption, transformation, but it's going to bring turbulence. And America is in this dasha until 2032. So I think there is going to be a lot of unrest continuing to then. And it's, you know, it's not an easy cycle. Then election day 2024, 5th of November. So I don't know what year we're in. There's some troubling aspects. The sun is debilitated and it's afflicted by a debilitated Mars. And that's creating huge problems with leaders in anger. Rahu's being aspected by the debilitated Mars as well. Oh, sorry, no. Rahu is aspecting the debilitated Mars. And Mars is sitting opposite Pluto. Then you've got the long-term aspects of the Jupiter-Uranus aspect by Ketu. And we've just seen the result of that coming into place. Uranus is going to be sitting on our goal for a few months. And you know, there could be lots of heat, fire, earthquakes, people losing their heads, that kind of thing. And, you know, it could be a problematic time. There's a lot of water signs that are quite prominent as well. So you could see potentially tsunamis, problems with ships. There could be problems also around the Americas as well with these kind of things. And the last time we had these aspects was in 1934, and of course that was around about the time that Hitler was being coached and created along with the Nazi Party. And you know, there could be some undertones of war and developing kind of problems as well. And you know, there could be protests around the election date, so just be careful, just be really careful around about that time, because I just feel like it's going to be nuts. I really feel like it's going to be nuts. Of course, I'd love to be wrong on that. I would really like to be wrong, but it just has a real overbearing energy of crazy. So be careful. But I hope you found this interesting. My heart really does go out to the family of the man who died and the people who got injured. It's absolutely awful. You know, politicians know that there's a risk that they're going to get targeted, but innocent supporters don't. And you know, that goes for both sides. But thank you very much for watching today, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye.